They told every Mustang pilot the same thing. If you ever find yourself alone, you're already dead. Yet on a frozen morning over Germany, one man proved that rule wrong. He wasn't an ace. He wasn't a legend. He was just an escort pilot, flying a machine built for survivors, not heroes. But fate doesn't care what you were built for. At 23,000 feet, his squadron vanished into a wall of cloud. And when he punched through the other side, he found nothing. No wingmen, no bombers, no radio chatter. Just silence. And then he saw them. 18 black specks rising from below like a swarm with a single purpose: erase him. For a moment, everything inside him went still. Not fear, something colder. The realization that nobody was coming. No reinforcements, no miracles. Just him, his Mustang, and 18 German fighters hungry for a clean kill. He pushed the throttle forward until the Merlin screamed, but he knew it wasn't speed that would save him. Not today. Today he would have to fight the way pilots were never trained to fight. Alone, outnumbered, hunted by enemies who believed they were already writing his obituary. But they didn't know who they were chasing. They didn't know what a cornered man could become. And they had no idea that the story they were about to enter would be one the Luftwaffe never wanted the world to hear.
The swarm climbed fast, too fast. At first, he thought they were Messerschmitts, but the silhouettes were wrong. These were Focke Wulfs 190s, the Luftwaffe's brutal workhorses, built for one thing: killing anything that dared fly alone. And today, that was him. The German leader rolled his wings once, a signal as old as war itself. Take him alive if you can. If not, tear him apart. He dropped altitude, hoping to force the fight low where the Mustang held the advantage, but the Germans didn't take the bait. They fanned out behind him, flying in a perfect half-moon. Calm, steady, patient. Predators who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. He could almost feel them tightening the noose, second by second, with the discipline of men who'd done this 100 times before. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't a random interception. This was an execution. The first bursts came from above, short, controlled, confident, the kind fired by men who weren't testing him, but measuring him. Every streak of tracer carved the air just inches from his canopy, close enough for him to feel the heat, close enough for the Germans to show they could end him whenever they wanted. They were toying with him. A single Mustang alone was a gift, a trophy, something they could take their time dismantling. He forced himself not to look back. Every instinct screamed to check his six, but he knew that would break his focus, and the Germans were waiting for exactly that. One mistake, one moment of panic. Instead, he scanned the horizon for anything he could use: clouds, sunlight, altitude, terrain. But there was nothing, just the empty sky and the cold truth that the fight was no longer about winning. It was about choosing how he would die. But then something unexpected happened. One German broke formation, just slightly, maybe a few feet, maybe less. To anyone else, it would have looked like nothing. But to a pilot fighting for seconds, fighting for air, fighting for life, it was an opening. A fracture in their perfect wall. A mistake. The kind of mistake men make only when they believe the kill is guaranteed. And in that tiny crack, he saw his first chance. He didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't think. He yanked the Mustang into a brutal climbing turn, forcing the G-forces into his ribcage until it felt like his spine might snap. The Germans didn't expect it. A lone pilot wasn't supposed to attack. He was supposed to flee, panic, break formation, anything except turn toward 18 wolves with blood in their teeth. But he did, and that single defiant act shattered the rhythm the Germans had built. The separated FW-190 swerved, too slow to return to formation, too proud to call for help. That was all the invitation he needed. He rolled, dove, and let gravity do the killing for him. The Mustang screamed as it dropped, tail shuddering, wings whining like metal under torture. He didn't fire yet. He waited for the moment when the German's confidence turned into understanding, the moment the hunter finally realized he'd become prey. And when that moment came, the pilot saw the Mustang's nose flash upward. The Mustang's guns erupted, not in a long, desperate burst. No, this was a surgeon strike, a heartbeat of fire, a single pulse. .50 caliber shells tore through the German cockpit like a fist punching through glass. The canopy blossomed outward, the engine coughed black smoke, and the FW-190 folded in on itself as if the sky had simply given up on holding it. The plane didn't spiral, it dropped, like a body with no soul left in it. The Germans froze. You could almost feel the disbelief radiating off them. They weren't supposed to lose a man, not to a single Mustang, not to a pilot who was supposed to be begging for his life right now. The disciplined half-moon shattered. 2 Germans broke left, 3 dropped behind him, 4 climbed to cut him off. The sky transformed into a cage of intersecting angles, every line drawn to slice him apart. He didn't have time to celebrate the kill. The second engagement hit him like a hammer. Tracers stitched the air past his wings, slicing bright orange wounds across the sky. He dove into them because diving away meant death. The Mustang's engine roared, strained, snarled under the sudden load. His vision tunneled, darkness creeping at the edges like a closing jaw. His ribs felt like they were cracking under G-forces, but the plane held. Barely. Then instinct, not training, saved him. He cut throttle for half a second, half a heartbeat. The Germans overshot, momentum carrying them forward in a lethal blur. To them, it must have felt like they'd swallowed the sun, because suddenly, he was on top of them again, rolling, diving, biting. A wounded animal that refused to die quietly. His guns thundered again, chewing through a second FW-190's wing root. The German plane's left wing snapped off like a bone. The rest of it followed it into the clouds below. 2 kills, 16 left. And now, the Germans were angry. Not insulted, furious. They came at him with the cold, methodical violence of men who believed rage was beneath them. The sky flashed with converging lines of fire. Every second felt like a coin flip, and each flip could land on death. But through the chaos, through the noise, he felt something shift deep inside him. He wasn't fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting to win.
The 4th minute of the fight began like a ritual, one no priest had ever blessed. The sky widened into a cold cathedral of violence, and the Mustang pilot found himself at the center of it, a lone blade held up against a storm of steel. The Germans came in pairs now, no longer hunting. They were executing. 18 wolves tightening their circle, each one convinced the kill was already theirs. For them, this was no battle. It was a ceremony, a cleansing. The first pair dove from above, crossing paths like twin executioners. The pilot pulled hard, and the Mustang shuddered as if protesting the brutality demanded of it. Tracers carved red sigils around him, symbols of death, written in the air with mechanical precision. He slipped between them like a ghost escaping its own body. But the ritual continued. Another pair dove, then another. The Germans weren't just trying to kill him, they were trying to erase him, to make the sky forget he had ever existed. He answered the only way a lone warrior can, with motion. Not speed, motion. Speed was for those with options. Motion was for those marked for death but unwilling to accept it. He slammed the Mustang into a climbing spiral, every rib of the aircraft screaming. The G-force tried to crush his heartbeat into silence, but he fought it because silence meant the ritual was over, and he was not ready to become an offering. 4 109s climbed after him, single file, hunters learning patience. They rose like black pillars in a funerary procession. The Mustang stalled at the peak for half a heartbeat, and then he kicked the rudder, hard. The aircraft snapped sideways, shedding its predictability like wounded skin. The Germans overshot, still climbing, engines screaming in confusion because the prey had just rejected the script of the ritual. He fired only when he saw metal, not shadows. One burst, one kill.
The 109 folded inward like a dying ritual dancer, smoke pouring from its ribs. But there was no time to witness the fall. Death doesn't pause its choreography. Another pair dived in a perfect crossing attack, two blades meeting at the throat of a single man. He didn't meet them head-on, he fell through them. He cut throttle, dropped like a broken hymn, and let gravity drag him beneath the crossing streams of fire. The bullets were close enough to hear their hunger, close enough to whisper the shape of his death. But gravity was his ally now, cold, cruel, and uninterested in ceremony. He rolled out below the attack paths and rose again. The ritual was breaking, the circle was opening, and the German pilots who had arrived as executioners now hesitated, not because they feared him, but because they sensed something sacred had fractured. A lone fighter should have died by now. A lone fighter was supposed to die by now. But he did not, and the sky does not forgive those who fail their own ceremony. The Mustang dove again, and for a moment the world narrowed to a single purpose: survive the ceremony that demanded his blood. He hit the cloud layer like a blade plunging into baptismal water. The Germans scattered above, the ritual collapsing into chaos. 18 hunters had begun the dance. Now only ghosts remained in the sky. And he was one of them.
In the end, aerial combat isn't about courage, rage, or even talent. It is a doctrine, an applied science written in velocity, angles, and the cold arithmetic of who sees who first. And on that day, the Mustang pilot who stood alone against 18 German fighters wasn't fighting as a man. He was fighting as a system. His survival began with the principle German pilots hated to admit: initiative kills. The first mover dictates the outcome. The pilot used altitude like a blade, descending only when he had energy superiority, climbing only when his engine temp gave him seconds to spare. Every move was an equation, every correction a variable, every kill a product of the doctrine, not the emotion. The Germans attacked in pairs, in trios, in broken arrow formations, but each time they committed, he snapped the geometry in half, forcing overshoots, corrupting their turn circles, dragging them into a vertical climb they could not match. He dismantled their doctrine by weaponizing his own. But doctrine is more than maneuvers. It is psychology. He understood that German pilots relied on momentum and intimidation, shock in numbers. So he inverted the equation. Instead of fleeing, he advanced. Instead of defending, he ruptured their cohesion by forcing them to make individual decisions. A swarm becomes harmless when every insect is forced to think alone. This wasn't heroism, it was disassembly. He broke their attack pattern like a mathematician splitting a curve. He used chaos not as a weakness, but as a sharpening stone. The more the battlefield fractured, the clearer the algorithm became. Isolate, pin, reverse angle, kill, ascend, repeat. A sequence brutal in its logic. When the fight reached its peak, the sky no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like an equation collapsing. Each Messerschmitt or Focke Wulf that broke formation became an exposed variable. Each variable could be solved with speed, positioning, or fire. And he solved them, one by one, with terrifying precision. The doctrine of survival demands an acceptance few pilots ever reach, that killing is not aggression, it is interruption. Not dominance, it is truncation. You don't overpower the enemy, you terminate their options faster than they can generate new ones. That is the logic of the sky.
That is the cold law he obeyed. And by the time the smoke thinned and the sky fell silent again, the result looked mythical, but it was not myth. It was doctrine. Applied without mercy, refined by necessity, executed with the precision of someone who understood he was already dead the moment he stopped moving. In war, survival is rarely a miracle. It is usually a formula. And that day, against 18 enemies, one Mustang pilot solved it perfectly.
When the last German fighter vanished into the cold haze, the Mustang pilot didn't feel victory, only the hollow pressure of silence settling over a sky that had consumed too much. He leveled his aircraft and let the engine's rumble fill the void where fear had lived moments earlier. Surviving 18 killers wasn't triumph. It was a reminder that the air doesn't spare anyone. It simply postpones the sentence. The clouds behind him carried the ghosts of the fight, moments where instinct ruled, where training outweighed hope, where death brushed so close it felt like part of his cockpit. He didn't return as a hero. He returned as a witness, a man who had seen what happens when doctrine meets desperation, when one pilot is forced to become his own squadron. And from that sky of ruin came three truths, cold, unchanging, carved into the silence like scripture. 1. Initiative is life. Whoever seizes the first moment shapes every moment after. 2. Skill is the real armor. Luck gets you a moment. Mastery gets you home. 3. Courage fades. Doctrine endures. Emotion burns out. Technique is what carries you home. So as he crossed back over friendly lines, he wasn't a symbol of triumph. He was the last echo of a fight no one should have survived. And if the sky ever chooses again, it won't choose out of mercy. It will choose out of law. A law older than tactics, older than nations, written in fire at 20,000 feet. If you want more stories where survival hangs by a thread and history breathes fire, you know what to do. Join us before the next battle chooses its survivor.